Yo, what's good with you? Back in black with another Enlisted video. If you guys are new to the channel and you love shooting games just like me, don't forget to aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. A few days ago, Enlisted came out with a new map set in Burma of all places. If I'm being completely honest, I was a bit taken aback by that, but it is nice to see them bolster that very starving Pacific campaign. Generally speaking, when it comes to World War II games, I would say the North African, the Italian, and the Pacific theater of the war are criminally underexplored, so I definitely want to give Darkflow their kudos when it comes to feeding us with content that we haven't seen repeatedly over and over from other shooter games. And yeah, I did a little bit of research, and this battle took place between 1941 and 1945, so sheesh. I mean, it definitely means they were there for pretty much the entirety of the war, and the fighting was mostly done between the British and the Chinese forces, which they versed the Japanese. And I will say I am a little bit perplexed, I guess you could say, that China isn't necessarily in the game as their own faction yet, if we're going all the way over here. But you know how Enlisted is going to do, they'll probably add them as premium squads and then you'll never see them again, because I guess they're not important enough or something like that. But speaking of factions, I do want to talk about that a little bit more, but I will do that a little bit later in the video. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that the layout and the design of this map has been crafted immaculately. Not only is it historically accurate, which I will say Darkflow and Enlisted have always done a pretty good job recreating things one-to-one as they were literally, I guess, almost 80-90 years ago at this point. But it seems that they have put a lot of thought into which specific part of Burma that they were going to use, because a lot of the combat is focused around the urban cities that make it somewhat hard to believe that these buildings were actually crafted in the 40s, which is crazy to say, but that's literally how advanced they look. Not to mention that they have implemented plenty of verticality and opportunities to exploit the urban setting to your advantage, with plenty of 2+ story buildings and multiple ways to get the high ground advantage, from stairs to ladders to scaffolding. Not to say that it doesn't feel like there's rural areas in some parts of the map, because I do see rice paddies and stuff like that, but I think the intention was to make a stark contrast from the other Pacific maps that are available, because I don't think there are any other ones that feature cities like this, and basically you'll just run into wooden shacks for cover. And speaking of those wooden shacks, you'll definitely notice the difference between those and the regular buildings in the city, as you won't be getting shot through the walls from 50 caliber machine guns and tank shells. So that is a nice little I wouldn't say quality of life, but you can really see the difference between like the materials being used in the bullet penetration. So the realism in that aspect of the game is always something that I can appreciate. And yeah, I mean, if you asked me what I would rate this map on a scale of 1 to 10, I feel like I would give this map, so far I've only played like 3 games, and I think I've only been on like this map in particular, the city one, but it's feeling like a solid 8.5 out of 10 so far. What do you guys think down in the comment section? Let me know. As far as like new weapons and vehicles, the USA got a new tank variant, basically another version of the Pershing with some rockets on the side. On the interesting side, the US also got the M1944 Hyde assault rifle, which is something that I have literally never heard of. So what I would like to ask is if you guys would like me to make a review on that gun. I'm going to get it either way because it just looks really cool and I was going to try it out regardless. But since I made some weapon reviews in the past, I just wanted to inquiry with you guys if you guys would like that kind of thing to continue, because I don't know, I haven't done one since that Japanese drum magazine PPSH looking thing. So let me know how you guys feel about that. Germany on the flip side is getting a 100 round MG42, which I mean honestly is not that exciting, but it's kind of OP, so yeah, I guess be on the lookout for that. But Japan is getting a new machine gun as well called the TE4, also something that I'm looking forward to trying out. But I'm kind of weary because Japan as a faction, they play horribly right now, to the point where I don't even remember. Actually, no, I got one win with them today, but it was a slog and we barely won. And the other games that I played with Japan, I lost by a very large margin. We basically got swept or we got steamrolled. So yeah, I don't know how soon I will be unlocking that new weapon, and I don't know how soon I'll possibly making a video for that, because again, Japan is horrible to play right now. Maybe something that the developers could take a look at, because this leads me into the next point of my video. I lied. One more thing before I get into my rant about the factions. They did upgrade the motorcycles a little bit in this game. Basically, they now come with ammo boxes equipped to the motorcycle by default, and Japan and Russia have motorcycles now as well. So basically every faction now has the motorcycles, which I don't really see them being used unless you're in like BR2 or BR1. So again, it's not really anything that means anything to me, nor do I think it means anything to anybody who is, you know, BR4 or 5. But if you do like to use the motorcycles, then by all means they will be a little bit better. Alright, so the other thing that I really wanted to talk to you guys about in this video was factions and Enlisted. Lately, I've been, you know, getting to a point mentally where I question the validity, or like what is even the point of having them in the game if there is no like distinct play style or pros and cons to each faction, generally speaking. Just as an example, eons ago, back when I made that one video about like how to play as Japan as a faction, I typically found that when you play as Japan, like in real life, they tended to be particularly weak against American teams that knew how to take advantage of using tanks and getting up close with their submachine guns and semi-auto rifles. Whereas on the flip side, Japan could dominate against the Americans if they knew how to play the long game with their bolt action rifles and their very accurate slow firing automatic weapons in comparison. So in the beginning, it felt like there were very organic differences between each faction, and of course that was more pronounced generally speaking. But I guess like as of late, they've been adding a bunch of captured weapons like rocket launchers for people who didn't necessarily have them or they didn't belong to that faction, and it basically just levels the playing field between each team, and it doesn't encourage anybody to learn the pros and cons or like what each faction is actually good at when it comes to like being good in Enlisted, not as an individual player, but just learning what each, you know, faction is good at, generally speaking, when it comes to their armament and their equipment. I'm pretty sure if you were to go into the research tree and then you saw all the similarities between each faction, you would understand exactly where I'm coming from when I'm saying that it just seems like each nation's capabilities are being melded together to a point where it literally has no bearing on the game which faction you choose. And this does a couple of things to the player base. One, or at least that I've noticed anyways, one, it incentivizes people to choose only one nation and remain there as long as they play the game, because one, that's where they started and that's where they're going to have most of their XP. And when it comes to unlocking new weapons and vehicles, why would you want to go back to another faction where you have to start from ground zero? And it's crazy because this is literally a point that I covered in one of my, I guess, most viewed videos when it comes to like it playing, you know, the Axis and Enlisted makes you a loser. But yeah, man, it just goes to show like how bad the experience gain is in this game, generally speaking, because like if one faction is gonna, you know, have more good players on it and you end up spending a decent amount of time on that faction, what incentive is there to start over or switch to a new one if you're just going to struggle again? There is literally none. And then we end up in these situations where it's basically no fun to play Japan at all unless you're running like a 2 or a 3 or a 4 stack of really good players. If you're a solo queue kind of guy like I am, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if you're not carrying your team, you're essentially getting steamrolled. and there is no in between, whereas if I were to play with the Americans, I could actually have a casual gaming experience and just relax and not have to worry about being the best on the team, which I'm going to try to do either way. But it is nice to have that little bit, I guess, like a sense of comfort, like I don't necessarily have to be doing 110% for us to even have a chance at winning. So it's kind of crazy to me that we ended up in this situation. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but generally speaking, I just have the mindset where, like, if you can't choose any faction in the game and have a good time, I think that kind of speaks to the quality of the game. I know some people would generally just blame the player base because, you know, everybody kind of like by default wants to choose the US because they have all the cool stuff and they, you know, were on the good guy team and they won. But also they should do a better job of implementing pros and cons with each faction. That way people will be incentivized to actually, you know, experience the full game. Because if everybody just played the US, then we'd just be playing against bots whenever we played the other team. And again, I don't think that is a situation that any enlisted player wants to end up in, if I'm being completely honest. And again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I for one hate when bots are on my team, and I also hate playing against them because they're just annoying, and up until this day they're still not really designed well or useful in any way, shape, or form. So there is that. I'm also aware that this is something that changes like over the seasons, because I do remember a very vivid time playing this game where Russia and I guess Japan, well, I don't think Japan was ever like one of the strongest factions in the game at any point, but I do remember when Germany and Russia were technically considered the strongest factions, and I think Germany is still pretty on par with the USA generally speaking. So if you're playing with them, it's not like you're necessarily going to have a good time. It's more so hit or miss. But I can say with certainty that 9 times out of 10 when you play as Japan, unless you're playing with a friend or something like that, you got to be prepared to like try your ass off. And that's not something, you know, I mean, I guess it's like you could consider Japan playing on hard mode, but again, I still think there should be some ebbs and some flows and a little bit of balance between these factions to get a more fun game overall, because I'm pretty sure the developers would also want most people to play every faction as opposed to just majority being on the US, which I'm pretty sure that's the way it's set up right now. But let me know down in the comment section, are you a fan of the if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing, or are you more so interested in each faction having a more balanced approach, or at least having pros and cons where you can queue up with each one and get a evenly kind of hit or miss random experience kind of game, instead of playing Japan and knowing that you're going to have to try really hard or lose 90% of the time. The other thing that I was going to ask is let me know what you guys think of the Burma update in general. What would you do to make each faction equally appealing? I am very interested to see what you guys would think down there in the comment section. And yeah, I do appreciate you guys for watching thus far. If you have, I'm going to let the rest of this gameplay play out, and yeah, if you enjoyed, don't forget to aim for that like button, shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. And yeah, Black Guy out.